Good evening, friends. Welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study. It's so great to be with you tonight as we open our Bibles to Psalm chapter 2. Psalm 2. And as you get in your Bible and your pen so you can mark special verses and make notations as we get into our Psalm study here. I'll make a few announcements while you're getting all that set up. As we begin, let's keep in mind that your giving is welcome. Still, we want to send checks to James Council, and his address is on our Facebook page there, so feel free to do that, or save your money up and give it when you come back to church. We're hearing from our officials that the coronavirus is expected to peak at the end of April. Some things may begin to reopen and get back to normal mid-May, late May, and that churches will probably be the last to reopen fully. So hopefully we'll be, back to full speed again by the 1st of July, I'm hoping. And so we want to just keep that in mind, that we're still looking forward to a great summer together. And please remember the church in your prayers and me in your prayers as we continue to seek to serve the Lord in any way we can. As we get going this evening, we want to keep Larry Barnhill in your prayers. He's in the hospital on the 5th floor, and just remember him if you would. Also, keep in mind our associational director, Brother Dave. His lungs are acting up a little bit, so we want to remember him as well. And thank you, a special thank you to Brother David and Brother Wayne, who are busy in their free time, making the sanctuary ceiling look a lot better and fixing the lights in several of the rooms. So we appreciate their diligence and their activity there. Anybody that wants to help, if you've got a free afternoon, your honey-do list is already whittled down, just give Wayne Tyler a call, and he'll help guide you to what needs to be done there. I know we have children's playground equipment that needs to be assembled, and some other projects like that are on our honey-do list at church, so let's keep those things in mind if you would as well. Let's open tonight to Psalm chapter 2. We are skipping around in the Psalms a little bit because of Easter. We looked at Psalm 22 last week because it was just a psalm of so much prophetic power dealing with the cross, and last week was Easter week leading up to Easter, and we were dwelling on the cross and thinking about it. And so in that vein, we want to open to Psalm 2 as we continue to consider what we call the Messianic Psalms. Now, Messianic Psalms are special psalms. Usually they're also considered royal psalms, in which it seems David is talking about himself. That is our first take on it. We look at Psalm 2, 6, 8, several other psalms as we get a little further into the book here that we're going to see, in which David is talking about his reign, his enthronement, his becoming king and subduing all his enemies and that sort of thing. And so this is about 1000 BC, about 3,000 years ago when these are written. And yet as we read that first run through, we think about David and what he's saying about himself and his relationship to God and God's will for him to be on the throne and the king and that sort of thing. But as Christians, when we read through the Psalms, we also can see hints, prophecies, foretellings, if you will, double meanings that David may have understood, or he may not have had any idea what he was saying. But God was saying through him to us things about Jesus, things which even the New Testament writers could look back and say, hey, we can obviously tell that when this was spoken by David, God was saying to us, here's what Jesus is going to do. He's going to do these things also. And so a double meaning, if you will, firstly for David, secondly also, and maybe even more significantly, about Jesus. And so that's going to be very true here in this second psalm, a beautiful psalm. Hopefully we get to come back and do Psalm 1 sometime when we have a little more time as we think about the whole book of Psalms, dwelling here for the next little while, though, on the Messianic side of that. So verse 1, why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. These first three verses form a freestanding idea here. And each of these ideas, each of these three verses, and they're all grouped, groups of three throughout this psalm. Each of these is going to add another layer to what we're being told here about the Messiah and about the King. And so as we stop and dwell on these first three verses together, we're going to notice some very interesting things. First of all, the kings are raging. Look there in verse 1. The heathen are raging and the people are imagining a vain thing. And what we're seeing in these verses from the Davidic point of view is that David had a hard time getting into the throne. He had a lot of trouble with King Saul, who helped elevate David by giving him great responsibilities, making him a general, marrying him to his daughter, and other things. And then Saul began to be very jealous of David and try to persecute him, until finally David was victorious. He clinched the kingdom, and then he had to deal with not only the heathen tribes, the enemies all around, but he also had to deal with a lot of hardship and headache within his own kingdoms of Israel and his tribe of Judah. And so there were a lot of strife and hardship, warfare even, associated with David getting on the throne. And so as we think about these first three verses here, we see that the heathen raged when David was getting into place there. They didn't want to see him enthroned. They understood him to be victorious, God's man, powerful, and so they raged. And we see here that term rage, not just a mild displeasure, but they were very upset. They were wound way up. And the people there, the people who are supported by the kings and their people, are imagining that they can tear down David. Now, if we stop for a minute and apply that to Christ, we can also see that that's very true and has always been true throughout history, that humanity rages against God. Their leadership has ideas that they're going to be permanent, that they're going to be eternal, that they'll have their way, and the people imagine that they can get rid of God's influence on their life, that His demands upon them, their Creator, won't have any more say. And so what we see very plainly here in verse 1 is that stubbornness, that hard-headedness, and really that futility, if you will, because here they are raging, but we're going to see by verse 4 God's reaction to that raging. Let's go on to verse 2 though and say, the kings of the earth set themselves. They're very determined. We see them sort of digging in, if you will, like in a tug of war where you see people sort of push down into the ground a little bit while they're pulling on the rope. They set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against His anointed. And so the Lord Himself, David is saying here that as people oppose God, they're opposing Him as well. He is the anointed in this situation. To be anointed means to have oil poured on your head by a prophet, and it's a sign that you're picked. You're the chosen one. You're the one that the prophet has selected for a special job. More than that, bigger picture, you're the one God has selected for a job. David was anointed. He had that oil poured on him, the youngest of his brothers. God said, you're going to be king in Saul's place because you are a man after my own heart. And so David is the anointed of the Lord on this first line of thought. But then we go on and we think about how Christ